Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Eddrick Show. I am your host, Eddrick Jerome, and this is the place for intelligent conversation with interesting people. Don't forget, in addition to our YouTube channel, you can also catch the Eddrick Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all of your online favorite streaming platforms for podcasts. Please subscribe, drop us a line, leave a comment, give us a like, let us know how we're doing as we continue to grow this thing from the ground up. My guest today is author and recent college graduate Christian Feraria. Christian is a public speaker and an early career professional from the San Francisco Bay Area. His new book, The Mediocre Students Guide to Graduating College, has just been published and is available on Amazon and will be in select bookstores later in November. In his book, Christian offers a guide for struggling and unmotivated college students, including advice on how to pick a major and other important topics of college life that can lead to graduating successfully. Christian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me,
All
man.
right, man.
Appreciate
Let's
it.
let's go. Let's go. So, tell me about the book. What inspired you to write it? The motivation behind it, the idea. How did that creative process work, and why did you decide to write this book?
So I actually read the Toni Morrison quote. It says, the book you want to read is the one you should write. And I just thought about that long and hard. And I was like, okay, I need to write a book for like unmotivated, struggling students. I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want to read, especially as like a 16-year-old. So that's actually how I went about it. And it came to me that night. And I swear I just worked on it for like 4 hours straight. I've never been so motivated in my life. And it came together. I got feedback. It's been about a year now after editing and whatnot, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a nice read. I think it's great for new college students. As a matter of fact, full disclosure, my daughter just started her college career, and so she's reading it right now. So thank you for sharing that with me because I was like, okay, honey, here you could take a look at this because I think it'll help you. There's some really good tips in there. So, um, when did you realize that you were quote unquote a mediocre student, and how did that impact you wanting to communicate to that particular constituency?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily always say mediocre, but I was definitely unmotivated. Like that
Okay.
was just the complete word I would use. So pretty much like end of high school and whatnot, just different subjects and whatnot. I struggled in some subjects, I strived in the other ones. Once I got to college, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. So I took a few classes in different majors and whatnot. I went to one econ class. I told myself I was an econ major for 3 hours. They read the syllabus. I went to my dorm room and I was like, yeah, this isn't happening. So then, with me, I'm a good talker, writer, all that, the energetic type of person. So I was like, okay, what can I major in? And I thought long and hard and I was like, okay, communications, because it's broad, but you can be just about whatever you want in that field. So I was like, okay, let me be a communications major. And that's kind of how I went about it.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention you were a graduate of St. Mary's, correct?
Yep. St.
Oh,
Mary's College, go Gales.
all right, all right. Um, in your experience, and maybe working with your friends, your other college students that you were around, um, what are some of the aspects of college life that can lead to students being unmotivated?
To lead the students being unmotivated? Well, one, I think you've been in school a long time. That's one thing a lot of people don't necessarily always weigh into. I know school is a necessary evil, but a lot of kids that we're just tired of school. We've been in there all the like our whole lives. So I think just being in there a long time, maybe you haven't been doing well. You might have pressure from parents, and you might honestly, I mean, I hate to say it, but sometimes at some schools, there are teachers that aren't necessarily the most motivating to some students. And I think that plays into it. So by the time you get to college, and let me say too, in high school, I think some teachers, they might scare you. They're scaring these 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-olds, but those kids don't know what college is really like. So when they get there, they don't really know what's going on and whatnot. So I think that kind of leads to the unmotivated factor because they're supposed to go to this thing. They don't know if they can get through it, but it's like society tells you, you have to go to college. It's kind of a status symbol, in my opinion. So I think that those are some of the factors that lead to it.
You referenced your switch of majors from economics to communications. But what is some advice you'd give to students about choosing a major? Because it is really important, and maybe talk about some of the mistakes that students might make in that choice.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the person, like for if you're a really good student, if you know you want to be a doctor, clearly you can go into biology, chemistry, whatever. If you're in between student, like I just feel like most people, their default major is business. And I mean, if you want to go for that, go for it. And then if you're a struggling student, I think you can go into a few other majors that'll still get you to a good place. But my whole thing is one, like I think the first semester, I think you should just try out a bunch of things. I don't think anybody should just be locked down to anything. And then number two, I think a lot of people should play to their strengths to an extent. Like I think pushing yourself is good, but everybody has strengths in some areas. So I do think playing to your strengths will naturally lead to a successful outcome. And then if you're a quote unquote mediocre student, my advice was get in a major that doesn't necessarily have the most tests because some people aren't good test takers. That's the way it is. And with me, I'm a writer, and in my writing and whatnot, I'll have a lot of errors. But the good thing about an essay is you can have it proofread. You can go to the professor. There are writing circles. There's so much you can do prior to turning it in. So by the time you turn it in, you're like, okay, I know I did fairly well because I did all this stuff. Whereas a test, you get there, you can study, but there's no guarantee. So that's my advice.
When I read your book, it reminded me of some of the things I went through in college. I went to San Francisco State. And one of the things I decided to become was a history major because I could use business statistics as a math requirement because I was not, advanced level math. Once I got to a certain level, it was a wrap. But so your point is well taken about being aware of the work required and the complexity and the dedication of especially some of the higher level math classes, which I think is one of the points of kryptonite, if you will, for students.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you also talk about, in addition to some of the things we just mentioned, you talk a lot about in a very non-judgmental, and I really like the way you approach this topic. You talk about the social life in college, and that's such an important point in students' development. It's just that whole notion of friends and roommates, and you write about that. So, what was your experience with the social scene at St. Mary's, and how were you able to navigate it? And more importantly, why did you put that in the book as well?
So should I start on social scene or roommates? Tell
Either
me.
one, either one.
Okay, so one, I'm gonna just say this because I brought it up on purpose because I really want to talk about it. But roommates, I think roommates
Go
should be
for it.
taken so seriously. Like people don't understand when you go like as a freshman, you might go on some server, you might put in your whatever preferences or whatever, but you're essentially going to be living with a stranger. So I think you need to take the process seriously because I know so many people that had bad the first year that had so many terrible roommate experiences. They had to switch out, just whatever, and they all look back and they say, "I wish I would have taken that seriously." So I say yes, fill out the form, but like I think you need to try and get to know the roommate. And I tell everybody like FaceTime the person, talk to them because over online like Instagram whatever we can all make ourselves appear the way we want to be. A text, somebody can think real hard and make themselves sound like a lovely person when they're not. But when you FaceTime, you can ask somebody the important questions that are important to you. And I hate to say it, but now like in 2022, like politics and whatnot, like there are some extreme political people. And generally speaking, I don't think politics should be like a rule breaker. But I mean, if somebody is like far, far, far left or far, far, far right, and you're the opposite, I think that's important. You should try and figure out these things before you get into your room and you see, and and they're planning whatever. So that's really important to me. And I think if you're watching this, you have a kid or you're a student going into take your roommate process seriously because that can make or break you. And then in regard to the social scene on a college campus is very interesting because you got a lot of different types of people. And when you get on the campus, there are some people, they know you don't know them, so they're going to appear to have their stuff together when they don't. You'll have guys wanting to be players when they're not. You have everything. So, first, when you get to your college campus, like have your own objectives and don't listen to the people around you because the people that act like they have their stuff together, they'll drop out after the first semester. But you wouldn't know that you just listen to what they've said. Um, Other than that, you should have like a few friend groups, in my opinion, like be a floater in regard to that, like the party scene and whatnot. Just be responsible, don't drink too much or whatever, but just be safe. Ride share apps. I mean, yeah, all that. If you have anything specific you want to ask about the social scene, but that's my summary, I guess.
Well, I guess I'm interested because you are of a generation. I'm older than you, and so we didn't have the Instagram and all of the different types of social media when I was in
You're older
college.
than me?
So yes, so to me, well, I take that as a compliment. Thank you. But to me, it's a lot different today for what you just referenced. I mean, there's all these different ways that you can be seen, whether you want to be seen or not. And so, how did you navigate the social media part of it? Because that's a big part of young folks today when they're in
Yeah,
school.
so yeah, absolutely. So nowadays, I mean, social media, like if you're my age, 22, 23, you kind of grew up with the phone in your hand. And a lot of people use social media a lot. I myself don't necessarily, but I just think that you should just know that social media is not real life. That's number one. And another thing about social media, I just think for a lot of people is like, I think in my opinion, a lot of people get like instant validation from social media, and I don't think that should be the case. I really think you should, limit your Instagram usage to maybe once or twice a day. Don't take it too seriously. And just know that too, unfortunately, like some people are kind of mean online, because they don't have to speak to your face and whatnot, receive backlash. So I just say manage your social media responsibly.
We talked a little bit before we came on, and I want to ask you now. What's been your family's reaction to the book? Because it's family is also part of a critical part of the college experience, and parents and expectations. So, talk to me about your family's reaction.
No, so my family, they all loved it. I mean, I don't want to tell their business, but they're all very successful people and they just liked how passionate, like they saw that I had like a clear why behind this. They all read it, they all thought it could help a lot of people and they liked how I kept it authentic. They didn't, I didn't quote unquote whitewash it or do anything that wasn't me. A lot of people that know me and read it, they were like, "Okay, this is Christian. He sounds like himself through. He put his personality in there." And I mean, overall, they're really happy and they're really happy for me. So yeah.
Well, congratulations. It's a great read. And as I said, to me, my daughter, she's, like I said at the opening, I definitely, first thing I did after I finished it was like, here you go. Because I think you're really hitting on something because it's simple, common sense things that can really help kids who are in a situation where they might think they don't have any alternatives or don't have any way to turn or nowhere to turn to. So kudos for taking this on and using your own experience to educate people because help is out there and you're obviously contributing to that. I want to switch gears a little bit now because you also like to travel and
Yeah.
I've seen you've traveled a lot. So um, how important is travel to you? And what are some of the experiences of travel that maybe have helped shaped you? Your view on America and other places.
Yeah, so travel, that is like my clear cut like passion in life. Other than anything, people know I have the plane on my wrist right here and have a lot of international friends. But I think travel is really important. I think everybody should do it. It should be like an obligation in your life because, in America, we kind of have our bubble here. And when you go to other places in the world and whatnot, everything's a lot different. And when, I went to Europe a bunch of times, but when I studied abroad, my junior year right before COVID. I got sent back, but that was a whole thing. I learned a lot. I woke up in a different culture. I had to speak Spanish every single day. The way of life was different. People were honestly a lot friendlier, in my opinion. And I just think the different languages, between the languages, the cultures, the way of life, and just, comparing and contrasting things from your hometown to here is just really important because you have to I just think it's one of the most educational things and people need to get outside of their hometown and experience almost the discomfort of living in a different place so that they can appreciate things about that place and about their hometown. So if you're watching this and you have a student or you are a student, I really think you should study abroad because it's going to open your eyes to new things.
Hmm. Last question I have for you as we get ready to wrap this thing up. You're also a major sports fan, hoops fan.
Yeah.
Talk to me about sports. The NBA season just kicked off. Warriors fan, right? I would think. Okay,
Oakland everything.
okay. So give me an outlook on the Warriors this season. The youngsters, how they're going to integrate them. Tell me what you think about Golden State.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna repeat. I think this year we're gonna be a lot better than last year. We have Wiseman coming back, and he's been very underrated. But his first year, he was averaging like 17,
He's a
and he's
beast.
no, yeah, and he's an upgrade from Looney and Looney was great, but he's an upgrade from that. I think Clay, like people are writing off Clay. I think Clay's going to be a lot better because for most people I know, they say the second year after the ACL is when people come back. Now he's either going to come back or he's either going to flop. But I really think this is going to be a good year for him. I mean, Steph's still in his prime. I mean, I know we have the whole Draymond situation, but the team is really in a good place right now as long as we can stay healthy. And the lovely thing about the Warriors is you can kind of see like the next generation coming. Like right
Hmm.
now, it's Steph, Clay, Draymond, right? But then it's like you like in maybe 2, 3 years, I can just see Steph handing the keys to Jordan Poole. Then Draymond, that'll be Wiseman. I mean, it's. I think we really have a good team for the next maybe 4 or 5 years. Well run. I personally wish they had stayed in Oakland. I was really upset about that, being like an East Bay native. But yeah, I think we're gonna win again. And when they do, I'll have to come back on your show and tell you I told you so.
Absolutely, absolutely, anytime, man. And to just piggyback on what you said about the Warriors, my opinion, it's just a testament to their ability to scout and draft because all those people you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned were homegrown. And they put pieces here and there. Shout out to JaMychal Green, who I think is going to be a great addition coming off the bench,
Yeah.
and Dante Vincenzo. I think I'm getting his name wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but so these, they've rebuilt, and I think they're set up nicely to rule the West for at least another 3 or 4 years. So
Absolutely.
let's go Dubs. All right, Christian. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Let's take a look at the book. You got it right there.
Buy my book,
There,
people.
there it is. Amazon and select bookstores in November. Christian, thank you so much for coming on the Eddrick Show, and thank you for putting out this very informational guide for college students.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, people, link will be in the bio for this video. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been another edition of the Eddrick Show. I am your host, Eddrick Jerome. Thank you for tuning in. Of course, you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and a host of all your favorite online podcast streaming platforms. Please subscribe, drop us a line, give us a like, let us know how we're doing as we grow this thing from the ground up. And of course, we always promise this is the place for intelligent conversation with interesting people. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next show.